In 1989, Boris Yeltsin, a high-ranking Soviet official, visited the United States. He went to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. He saw the rockets and the technology. He wasn't impressed. The Soviet Union had rockets too. But then, he made an unscheduled stop. He asked to visit a random, average American supermarket. He walked into a Randall's grocery store, and he froze. He saw endless aisles of fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, and thousands of different products. He saw ordinary Americans buying whatever they wanted without waiting in line. Yeltsin, a powerful leader of a nuclear superpower, put his head in his hands. He turned to his aides and said, "If our people saw this, there would be a revolution." He later wrote in his autobiography that on the plane ride back to Moscow, he couldn't stop crying. He realized that the Soviet Union had lost. Not on the battlefield, not in the space race, but in the grocery store. This video is the story of why the Soviet Union collapsed. It wasn't because of Ronald Reagan. It wasn't because of the CIA. It was because of a fatal economic flaw called central planning. To understand this, we have to look at how the Soviet economy worked. In a capitalist system, nobody decides how many shoes should be produced. It is decided by price signals. If people want more shoes, the price goes up, and factories make more shoes to make a profit. It happens automatically. But in the Soviet Union, there were no prices, there was only Gosplan. Gosplan was a massive government committee in Moscow. Thousands of bureaucrats sat in offices and tried to plan the entire economy of a massive empire. They decided exactly how many tons of steel to produce, how many liters of milk, how many pairs of shoes. They set the price of everything. But here is the problem. It is impossible for a group of bureaucrats to know what 200 million people want every day. Because there were no price signals, the system was blind. Gosplan would order a factory to produce 10,000 tons of nails. To meet the quota, the factory would produce one giant, useless nail that weighed 10,000 tons. Gosplan would change the order to 10,000 individual nails, so the factory would produce millions of tiny, microscopic nails that were useless. This happened in every industry. The USSR produced more tractors than the US, but half of them broke down instantly because the factories cared about quotas, not quality. They produced millions of shoes, but they were all in sizes nobody wore. This created the defining feature of Soviet life, the shortage. People spent hours standing in lines. If you saw a line on the street, you joined it immediately without asking what they were selling. It could be toilet paper, it could be sausage. It didn't matter, you bought it to trade it later. Money was meaningless because there was nothing to buy. So, how did the Soviet Union survive for 70 years? 2 reasons. First, the black market. The only thing that actually worked was the illegal second economy. People traded favors. I will fix your car if you get me meat from the butcher. Corruption was the grease that kept the rusty machine moving. Second, oil. In the 1970s, oil prices skyrocketed. The Soviet Union was sitting on massive oil reserves in Siberia. They pumped oil, sold it to the West, and used the dollars to buy food to feed their people. They were a superpower on life support, kept alive by high oil prices. But in the 1980s, the oil price crashed. Suddenly, the cash was gone. The inefficiencies of the system were exposed. The leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, tried to fix it with perestroika restructuring. He tried to introduce a little bit of capitalism into the system, but it was too little, too late. You cannot be a little bit pregnant, and you cannot have a little bit of free markets. Once the people saw the truth, once they saw the rock music, the blue jeans, and the full supermarkets of the West, the illusion was shattered. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. It is the greatest bankruptcy in human history. So, what is the hidden logic? The Soviet Union proved that you cannot plan an economy from a desk. An economy is not a machine. It is a living, breathing organism made of millions of human decisions. Markets are not perfect, they have crashes and bubbles, as we saw in this series. But markets process information. Central planning destroys information. The Soviet Union had the smartest scientists, the best mathematicians, and the most powerful rockets. But they couldn't figure out how to put a loaf of bread on a shelf, and that is why they fell. This concludes our series Empires and Economics. We traveled from the gold mines of Mali to the trade routes of the Ottomans. We saw how Spain died of too much money and how Britain sold drugs to balance the books. We watched the South lose because of factories and Germany collapse because of printing presses. And finally, we saw the Soviet giant fall because of a grocery store. The lesson of history is clear. Economics is not just numbers. It is the story of human survival. If you understand the money, you understand the world. Thank you for watching Hidden Logic. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe and share this playlist. A new era is beginning on this channel. Stay tuned.